The heat is on. New Yorkers did their best to stay cool today as we enter an extended stretch of blistering temperatures.
Still rallying, supporters of Trayvon Martin continue to make their voices heard days after his killer was acquitted of murder.
And swinging for the fences. Some of baseball's biggest sluggers thrill the crowds in Queens at the hometown home run derby. Good evening, I'm Louis Dodley.
And I'm Elizabeth Caledon. If you were sweating it out today, you may not be surprised to learn it was, in fact, the hottest day of the year so far. Temperatures hit a high of 94 in Central Park, Louis. It's not expected to subside anytime soon.
It was certainly steamy. Meteorologist Todd Kirkman joins us now with the first look at this steamy forecast. Are we in for a 6-day heat wave, Todd?
You know what, Louis? It looks like that at this point. I don't think we're really going to find any kind of substantial relief until at least, or at the earliest, the second half of this upcoming weekend on in the mid-90s. Back to you, Louis and Elizabeth.
All right. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
City officials are reminding you to keep cool and take advantage of one of the many ways to beat the heat this week. City pools and beaches are open all week long. Most pools are open every day until 7, and lifeguards at the beach are on duty until 6. If you want to open a fire hydrant, make sure you use a fire department approved spray cap. You can get one at your local firehouse if you are over 18. Others are heading to the Muhlenberg Library, which also serves as a cooling center. The city says hundreds of cooling centers will be open around the 5 boroughs through at least Thursday.
It's like an oasis in the middle of the desert. We're blessed to have these places like this.
I get a lot out of this cooling center. Sometimes I meet people and I read very interesting things.
To find a cooling center near you, you can call 311 or go online to nyc.gov/OEM.
Protesters upset about the not guilty verdict in the trial of George Zimmerman rallied for the second straight night in Manhattan. A group gathered again in Union Square to voice their dismay over the verdict tonight. They say they want their rallies to have one specific purpose.
It'll send a very strong message that people all over this country and in the world do not accept the cold-blooded lynching of Trayvon Martin at the hands of George Zimmerman.
Farther downtown, a group of just under 100 protesters rallied on the steps of the federal courthouse in Foley Square. Protesters there say they wanted to add their voices to the call for justice.
It really breaks my heart that, it feels like the system has failed us once again, and it feels like so many people of color continue to face this bitter reality time in and time again. And I just feel like we have to band together, and it's beautiful to see us all coming together and being a part of something that's bigger than ourselves.
More demonstrations are planned across the country this weekend. Reverend Al Sharpton says prayer vigils will be held at federal buildings in 100 cities Saturday to call for federal civil rights charges against Zimmerman.
The Justice Department is now reviewing the case, but now that Zimmerman has been acquitted of murder and manslaughter, New York politicians want him to face federal civil rights charges. Our Zach Fink has more.
The reverberations from the weekend acquittal of George Zimmerman continue. U.S. Attorney Eric Holder would not commit to any additional prosecution, but in his remarks Monday, he let people know that federal civil rights charges are still a real possibility.
I want to assure you that the department will continue to act in a manner that is consistent with the facts and the law. We are committed to standing with the people of Sanford, with the individuals and families affected by this incident.
Members of New York's congressional delegation also urged federal intervention, arguing the case is far from over.
We respect the jury's verdict, but the state prosecutorial chapter has now been closed, and a new federal chapter has been opened.
According to Jeffries, there is precedent for federal prosecutors pursuing their own case. He cited the police officers who faced federal charges after they were acquitted in California state court in the beating of Rodney King. Lembrick Nelson also faced federal civil rights charges for the fatal stabbing of Yankel Rosenbaum in the racially charged Crown Heights riots here in New York City more than 20 years ago. And New York City police officer Francis Lavoti, who was not convicted in Bronx State Court for the 1994 strangling death of Anthony Baez, but then went to federal prison for a civil rights violation.
You know, if this was the only time, or the first time, that something like this had happened, perhaps you wouldn't see the outpouring of emotion that you see not only at this press conference, but throughout our nation. But it happens too often.
The Department of Justice has already announced that it is reviewing the case. No word on how long that would take or whether or not charges would even be brought. Experts say that the federal government needs to know it can win the case before going forward. In Lower Manhattan, Zach Fink, New York 1.
In other news, police are hoping surveillance photos will help solve a deadly shooting in the Bronx. Officials say they're looking to question the three people pictured here about the shooting. 27-year-old Levon Latimer was shot several times on Mount Hope Place Friday night. The Queens man was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead.
Police are also trying to find the person who assaulted another man with a hammer on a Brooklyn street. It happened Thursday morning on Jefferson Avenue in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Police say the victim was approached from behind and was hit several times in the head. A friend of his tells us the 34-year-old victim lost an eye. Officials say it appears the victim did not know his attacker. If you have any information in either case, call the Crime Stoppers hotline. That number is 1-800-577-TIPS.
On Staten Island, an elderly woman says she thinks burglars are behind a fire that destroyed her home, which was just renovated from Hurricane Sandy. 90-year-old Mary Roberts says she's just recently moved back into her Newport Beach home. She was on vacation when she says someone broke in Sunday morning and stole 2 TVs and a car, then set a fire. Police say the home was also burglarized last month when someone stole hundreds of dollars in cash, credit cards, and her driver's license. Roberts says it took $45,000 to repair the flood damage after last year's storm.
We fixed it all up, fixed it beautiful, and they destroyed it. I don't know. I hope they can get the guys that do it.
The home is considered unlivable because of smoke and water damage. Roberts says she plans on staying with relatives. The fire department is still investigating.
To the campaign trail now, where a new poll shows sex scandals do not appear to be weighing down Anthony Weiner and Eliot Spitzer. The candidates lead the pack in their respective Democratic primary races. A Quinnipiac University poll shows that in the Democratic primary for the mayor's race, former Congressman Weiner has 25% of the vote. City Council Speaker Christine Quinn is not far behind with 22%. Bill Thompson and Bill de Blasio got 11 and 10% respectively. Analysts say that Weiner took the lead by picking up black voters. 31% of African Americans surveyed would vote for him, far more than any of his competitors. In the controller's race, Spitzer is leading Manhattan Borough President Scott Stringer 48% to 33%. A poll last week also put Spitzer ahead of Stringer, but by a smaller percentage. The survey has a margin of error of 3.6 percentage points, and there are about 8 weeks to go before the primaries.
Well, all-star action continues tonight at Citi Field with a home run derby.
That's right. Our Michael Herzenberg has a front row seat. He's been out there talking to fans, and he joins us now with all the excitement. Hi, Michael.
Hey, Elizabeth and Lewis. This was a sold-out event, the Home Run Derby. A chance to see the biggest sluggers in the game. People are streaming out of Citi Field even right now. And what's this all about? Well, every kid dreams of catching a home run ball, and more than 80 big shots were hit tonight. This is the best chance of the season to grab one. We found a 25-year-old waiting to catch a ball since he was 2 years old, and he finally did.
First time, yeah. So it was cool. It was fun.
How long have you been going to baseball games?
How long have I been alive? Since I was 2, probably. So 25 years.
Thousands of people braved the heat, lining up outside Citi Field, waiting to get in to see the Home Run Derby. With the exception of the Subway Series, it's the only regular event that brings together Yankees fans and Mets fans, as well as foreigners.
Not a foreigner, but I appreciate the hospitality to the New York Mets. I am representing St. Louis, Missouri.
It ain't bragging if you can back it up. And that was Dizzy Dean, an original Cardinal, basically saying what we're saying, being the #1 in the MLB.
Do you have a good seat to catch home runs or no?
Third deck in the outfield, first row.
So it's doable.
If it's a shot, yeah.
You didn't bring your mitt, did you?
It's in my bag.
Kids and adults waited patiently during the afternoon, hoping to catch a glimpse of their favorite All-Stars going into the stadium. Whose autograph do you want?
Dave Wright's. And Bryce Harper.
Little Bryce Harper. You made the trek all the way from Pennsylvania.
Yes, we did.
How long? How many hours?
It was about 4 hours. Traffic maybe a little longer, so but it was worth it.
We'll have an autograph signing in Cecil Field. The first 100 people to come in. The wait wasn't too long outside the Modell Sporting Goods tent for a keepsake and a picture with retired All-Star slugger Cecil Fielder. This guy got his jersey for his 16th birthday years ago. Now Fielder will soon celebrate a big one.
Wish him a happy birthday. His birthday, big 5-0 this September. So yeah, it was really cool meeting him.
The years that I played in the All-Star game, I mean, I have my whole family enjoy it because, you know, it's really a one-in-a-lifetime situation.
A family memory for many that will last a lifetime.
And taking my daughter, who's 11 years old, her first All-Star game, it's a great pleasure.
Lots of events scheduled for the All-Star game tomorrow, which promises to be just as much fun, if not more, but the heat will be back, too, to make it a scorcher. That's the latest from Citi Field. Michael Herzenberg, New York 1. Lewis and Elizabeth, back to you.
All right, thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. But Tom McDonald will join us later with sports from Citi Field. Also ahead in the show, tuition turnaround. After an outcry from students, Cooper Union is rethinking its decision to charge students for the first time in more than a century.
Subway riders will tell you the G does not stand for good service, but the often neglected line is on track for improvements. We'll explain.
And as the All-Star festivities take over Queens, we'll profile everyone's favorite cowbell-playing Mets superfan.
A court will soon weigh in on whether the owners of the World Trade Center can sue airlines for billions of dollars in damages related to the September 11th attacks. A judge began hearing arguments today. The owners say airlines, including American and United, were negligent in allowing terrorists to board the planes and then crash them into the Twin Towers. Boeing and the Massachusetts Port Authority are also named in the suit, but the defendants say they shouldn't have to pay because the owners have already collected nearly $5 billion in insurance. The judge says the owners could potentially get up to $3.5 billion in the suit. The judge is expected to issue a ruling after another 2 days of testimony.
Well, facing an outcry from students, Cooper Union is rethinking its decision to begin charging tuition for the first time in more than 100 years. The college says it's creating a working group of trustees, students, alumni, and faculty to figure out the school's financial issues. The goal of the group is to continue providing full scholarships for all students while keeping the school financially viable. The Board of Trustees will make its decision on the group's findings in December. After the school announced earlier this year it will begin charging tuition in 2014, students protested the decision by camping out in front of the president's office and later moving inside to occupy it. The school says that protest ended on Friday and will not punish anyone who is involved.
It is the shortest line in the subway system, but also the fastest growing. The G train is becoming more and more important, and as our transit reporter Jose Martinez tells us, the MTA wants to make sure to keep it up.
The long wait for better service could soon be over for G-Train riders. On Monday, the MTA released its review of the line, concluding that its 125,000 daily riders need trains to run more often during the afternoon rush.
It is a lifeline for folks who do use it, and as we know, more and more do.
The plan calls for running trains every 8 minutes instead of every 10 between 3 and 9 p.m. when the G has more riders. It would cost at least $700,000. The MTA board is expected to take up the issue next week. The agency also plans to have the short 4-car trains stop at the same spot on a platform every time, so passengers don't have to race to get on, the so-called G-Train Sprint.
The MTA has put out a bunch of solutions. Some take some additional funding, some don't. You know what they've really done? They've said to G-Train riders, we hear you.
The review followed calls from politicians and the Riders Alliance for better service along the 11.4-mile line that's limited to Brooklyn and Queens. But neighborhoods along the line are growing, and last year the G added more than 2,000 riders a day, more than any other line.
These changes are going to make riding the G train a much better experience.
The prospect of a boost in service came as welcome news to G-Train riders who've grown frustrated of having to deal with the line's quirks.
The only way to get to certain places in Brooklyn, and it's very difficult to get there without planning a half hour or an hour in advance.
People that needs to get back and forth
that gets work in the evening or afternoon or whatever, they can, travel a little bit better.
In addition, weekend work to fix a G-train tunnel heavily damaged by Hurricane Sandy is expected to last through December. But at least there's the possibility of good news on the horizon for G-train riders. In Brooklyn, Jose Martinez, New York 1.
And still to come on News at 11, hot town summer in the city. We're in for a big heat wave, and today was just the start. Todd will be along for another check of the forecast after the break.
And it's a farewell tour for the popular Coney Island concert series in Brooklyn. We'll take you to the sea for a swan song after the break. Time now for a second look at our forecast. We might as well get used to the heat. It isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
That's right. The headline is it's hot and it's going to stay hot. Todd joins us again from the Weather Center. Hi there, Todd. I guess, as Lewis said, we better get used to it.
Yeah, unfortunately, we just got to kind of deal with it. I know there are a lot of people that like the heat. They like to go to the beach or spend some time in the pool, but there are a lot of folks that just can't manage very well. Elderly, small children, pets have a tough time in this heat. And of course, if you're doing any kind of physical work outdoors, it's pretty much miserable. Make sure you stay hydrated, drink plenty of water. Continue in the 90s through at least Friday, maybe Saturday also. Back to you, Elizabeth and Lewis.
All right. Thank you, Todd.
Thanks, Todd.
On Wall Street, room for growth as the markets continue their upward trend, and one of the nation's biggest banks also reports a boost in earnings. Diane King Hall has all the day's business headlines from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
Well, it was a pretty quiet start to the week on Wall Street, but stocks notched another day of gains. By the close, the Dow added 19 points, extending its record. The Nasdaq gained 7. Shares of Citigroup rose nearly 2% today after reporting a huge jump in earnings. The nation's third biggest bank says net income topped $4 billion for its second quarter. Revenue was $20 billion. Credit for the double-digit leap in profit goes to its investment banking and securities business, namely stock trading and fixed income. The bank also continued to wind down and sell unwanted assets in its Citi Holdings business. Maybe all that glitters is gold. Tiffany got a boost after its rating was hiked by an analyst at Stifel Nicolaus to a buy from a hold. The analyst says sales at the luxury jewelry retailer will increase thanks to an increase in the wealth of its well-heeled clientele. So the stock rose 3.5%. Finally, thrifty consumers spend less than expected in June. The Commerce Department says retail sales rose 0.4% last month. Cash registers suffered at department stores, restaurants, and bars. But 8 of 13 tracked categories saw an increase in spending led by car dealers. Industry watchers say the softer sales shows that Americans remain frugal as they boost nest eggs. From the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, I'm Diane King Hall.
If you've spent the last few months craving a Twinkie, you can get your fix again. The snack cakes are back in stores tonight, 8 months after production was halted when the Hostess company filed for bankruptcy. A private equity firm eventually took over. Some national retailers started selling Twinkies over the weekend ahead of the official nationwide return.
It's the last run for one of Brooklyn's signature events, the annual free summer concert series in Coney Island. Borough reporter Janine Ramirez explains why.
It's the beginning of the end for the annual Seaside Summer Concert Series. Borough President Marty Markowitz took the stage for the start of its final run. The free seasonal shows are a tradition he started 35 years ago when he was state senator, along with his customary white jacket.
I have 3 sets of white jackets. Unfortunately, this is the only one that fits me for the summer of 2013. But I have never thrown away any of my white tuxedos, even from 35 years ago.
But Markowitz is nearing the end of his 12-year borough presidency and is not seeking another office. So as he lets go of public life, so go his outdoor concerts. But as one of his last projects, Markowitz set aside some $50 million to build an amphitheater.
Once the amphitheater is built, the music will never end in Coney Island.
As New York One first reported last summer, this landmark building will be the venue site. Just last week, the City Landmarks Preservation Commission approved the new design. It calls for a 5,000-seat performance space with an adjoining outdoor lawn for more seating. It'll also include a restaurant and some kind of covering.
Why it's so important to have a covered amphitheater in case of rain that the show will go on, rain or shine.
The Seaside Park and Community Arts Center is expected to hold as many as 40 concerts between May and October. While cleared through landmarks, the project still needs to go through the public review process. It'll go to the Community Board, the City Planning Commission, and the City Council. Markowitz says if it gets the approvals it needs by the end of the year, construction will begin next year under a new borough president.
I hope that the next borough president will extend an invitation to me, and I want the next borough president to know I accept.
The goal is to have the amphitheater open in 2015. In Coney Island, Janine Ramirez, New York 1.
And still to come on News at 11, the basketball player formerly known as Ron Artest is coming home.
Tom will have more on the deal to bring Queensbridge native Metta World Peace to the Garden.
All right, a big night in sports, especially if you happen to be out at Citi Field. That's where all the action is.
That's also where Tom McDonald joins us now with more. Tom?
The highlight tonight was the home run derby, and unlike last night, maybe there was 8,000 or so, well over 30,000 tonight, and I gotta say, it was a hoot. And of course, the local fans who were rooting for the captains, the Yankees' Robinson Cano with his dad throwing to him, and it just wasn't Robbie's night. He only hit 4 home runs. And so on the other half, when David Wright got his opportunity after Cano, well, if we're at Citi Field, everybody was rooting for David Wright, but he, like Cano, just was not up to speed, had only 5, so we're nowhere near the finals. And when it came to the finals, it was quite a show. Some of the homers went over 450 feet. Yoenis Cespedes of the Oakland A's was the winner, and he was by far the power hitter tonight. In other news, the Knicks' J.R. Smith, and this isn't good news to pass along, he has a left knee problem and is going to be out for 12 to 16 weeks. And that's fresh off of them signing him to a new contract. When I knew a St. John's grad, his name was Ron Artest. Now he's Metta World Peace. And there are reports tonight that he is going to sign a 2-year contract with the Knicks. Talk about coming home again, and say 2 things about him. He's got an explosive personality. So our whole staff is out here to talk about the All-Star Game, the Home Run Derby. And so when you're finished after the news, we'll give you everything you need to know. Back to you guys in the studio.
All right, thank you, Tommy. We'll look forward to that. And finally tonight, the players are obviously the biggest attraction at the All-Star Game, but they're not the only ones. Some fans can attract a crowd too. Our Rochelle Boone spent some time with the Cowbell Man.
When you're at Citi Field and you hear that sound, it means the Cowbell Man is in the building. Eddie Boyson says he has never missed a home game, and he certainly wasn't going to skip the excitement of the All-Star activities at the ballpark.
This is something that's a dream come true, and to have the All-Star game here at Citi Field, it's just unbelievable.
Boyson has been a diehard Mets fan his whole life. He can remember the last time the Mets hosted the All-Star game. It was 1964 at the old Shea Stadium, and he was just 7 years old.
Wow, I remember the Wells Fair, you know, right across the street from here. And just Casey Stengel, all the great players they had then, Willie Mays.
Boyson became a staple at the ballpark when he started knocking on the bell to pump up the fans. He's done it every year for the past 23. Now he's recognized by many diehard Mets fans as he does his usual loop outside and then inside the ballpark before hanging out with a group of regulars called the 7-Line Army.
Gotta get the All-Star photo with Cowbell Man.
The Cowbell Man is not an official part of the All-Star festivities, but he has certainly been a highlight for many fans who stop him every few feet to take a picture or let their kids ring the bell.
It makes my day when I make theirs. That's what it's all about.
Well, that and the love of baseball. At Citi Field, Rochelle Boone, New York 1.
And that does it for News at 11.
Sports on One, the last word is coming up next.
Good night.